My, that's delicious. Hello, welcome to WayPoint Survival. Today, we're going to talk about hobos eating leather pants. Stay tuned. So back in the day, particularly in times when people were much harder up than they are now, one of the things that a person would do is, especially in the summertime when your crops would come in, you would sit around and you would snap beans. Of course, if you've been around the country very long, if you got any kind of age on you at all, you're very familiar with this process. And often we can them today. However, there was a food that they used back in the old days, and especially back during the Depression, the 20s and 30s. And this goes way back, more than likely thousands of years. And these type of green beans or pole beans were very commonly used. And this is a meal that a poor man could have. Remember that a lot of hobos were agricultural workers. And so it would not be uncommon for them, if there wasn't a lot of cash money, which there wasn't during the Depression, is they would be willing to work for a meal and perhaps a little extra, and often the housewife would go ahead and give him a little extra wrapped up in a sack or a bag, perhaps in a handkerchief that he could take with him so that he would have a meal later on. And a lot of hobos survive that way. So what we're doing here is we're just sitting here and we're just breaking some beans. And this is not a complicated thing. And you're just going to break them into pieces about that big. Again, not huge, but you can kind of see what we're coming up with here. And you would do that until you had all of them broke up into fairly decent pieces. So again, maybe a couple of inches long, something like that. And it would just be something you would sit on the front porch. You would chat and talk while you did things like this. And this would be something for an evening exercise as you're getting things ready for wintertime. Because remember, they didn't have stores to go to in a lot of places, and they didn't have money even if they could get to the store. So you were very reliant on what you could put together, what you could grow and make, and then store for yourself for the upcoming winter and those hard times during months like January and February, February was called the starving moon. Before we go any farther, I'd like to take a moment and remind you to sign up for our brand new newsletter. And thank you to everybody that signed up for the new e-bike that we're giving away. And I'll be announcing that here in a little bit, another week or so, about who the winner actually is. So we're really excited to give that away. All right, when you want to sign up for the newsletter, go to waypointsurvival.com. That's where you'll find all kinds of great information. It's completely free, and it's Waypoint Survival and Prepping 101. You'll get that in your mailbox, in your inbox, at least once a week, if not sooner. You definitely want to sign up for that. Make sure you go there. Thanks a lot. After you got together a goodly number of beans, and it'll be nice and broken, you want to take a needle and some thread, and you want to string them together. So get your string out here, or your thread, whatever you want to use. And you don't want a huge amount. That's probably good enough right there. What we have here is about, I don't know, a couple of feet maybe. After you get your needle threaded, you just go down here to the other end and just simply tie it off. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. I just put both of the threads together and then just do like a double overhand knot like this. Just once and then twice. Pull that through and then pull that tight. And you got a little bit of a knot here. Now what we want to do is we want to pierce one of the beans and slide it all the way down to that knot. Now this is very important. You need to tie this off again with another double overhand knot so it can't get off because the bottom one can slip off as that knot's not enough to hold it. So again, we've just tied it around the bean, just like that. Now we just continue with that process, and we just thread this on and slide it down. As you can see what we're doing here. Now on any of your beans, if you've got a bit of the stem like that, you want to go ahead and break that off, and you could lay that aside to feed to your animals or your chickens, something like that. But generally speaking, you're just looking for the beans. This doesn't have to be a difficult or long drawn out process. It goes pretty quickly, as you can see here. All right, once you get a goodly number on there so that you've got a decent string of beans, depending on how strong your thread is, you can go ahead and pull that out. This one pulls out pretty simply. Make sure and store your needle somewhere. You won't lose it. And then you want to take your beans here and you want to tie the top of it off. So again, just a simple overhand knot, and it doesn't have to be fancy or anything like that. This is just to keep the whole string together. All right, there we go. You can see we've got a nice string of beans. And once you got your beans ready, and you would make a whole bunch of these, you would take it someplace in your attic, or in this place in the cabin up above the fireplace, and you have a little loop here at the top, and you would have hooks or nails up over top of the fireplace, and you would simply hang the beans right there. Now you would continue to repeat this process. You would have a lot of hooks, a lot of nails, and as a matter of fact, when you went into attics of old houses and cabins back then, just the whole area of the rafters would be covered with things that were drying, both herbs and medicinal plants, as well as foods and things from the previous summer's growing season. And then you would gradually use that throughout the winter to make your food and to try to have something to eat when nothing was growing outside and perhaps game was scarce. Now, while it was known to have happened back in the Depression and during days of the gold rush and all of that, men did eat leather belts and leather shoes and leather jerkins and just about anything that they had that was made out of leather. A lot of rawhide items that they could chew or boil to make softer, just something to get in their stomach. As a matter of fact, there's a famous Charlie Chaplin clip where he is in the movie called The Gold Rush, and he's boiling and eating his leather shoe. Of course, actually it wasn't real leather. The shoe was made out of black licorice, but it makes for a pretty humorous episode. If you've not seen that, it's worth watching. But after the beans were dried, you would take this, and then they're really rattly, you can hear that, and super light and last for many months. And so this is something that a hobo would get, again, from someone he had worked for during the summer, and they would give this to him because it was a trail food. Very common among the hobos and outdoorsmen, as well as in regions of Appalachia and down south. This is a very common food for poor people. Let's show you how to make it. Now, since hobo jungles were next to water sources, there would always be a place where you could go get water. The creeks and streams were not quite as polluted in a lot of areas as they are today. And so you would always carry some sort of an old tin can or perhaps an old bucket, an old lard bucket, and you would go down and you would get some water. And for this, we've got about half a little pail here of water. Notice this one does not have a handle. It's tapered, so more than likely this is for lard. It would not be a berry pail, but it's a very heavy tin, and so this would be just perfect for what we need. Once you got your water, go ahead and take your beans, and then with your pocket knife, you go ahead and very carefully cut the string or the thread and lay that aside. And then you want to take your beans and turn them upside down, just like this. And then you should be able to very carefully run them off into the water. Just unstring them. Now you will have one left over. That was the one on the end that was tied. You don't want to waste any food, of course. So cut that off, and we have our very last dried bean. Go in there, and then you would want to stir that around. After you get those in there, you want to get your spoon out of your pocket, which is something that a hobo always carried with him. And I do want to thank my good friend Robert Laplander, who is an author, and he found these amazing YMCA, a couple of spoons and a fork, and I just really like this, and be using this. Stir this. All right, now to make this warm up a little faster, we're going to place it over the fire. Place it right here on the coals. And remember, you don't want a fire, you want coals for this. And you don't want to cook this. We're just trying to rehydrate them and warm them up. And you need to soak them for at least an hour. If it's in cold water, it's much faster if you can warm it up like this. But we don't want to cook them because that's not the plan yet. And again, if you were just using these in a hobo camp, you would soak these perhaps overnight. Okay, looks like they're rehydrated. And you can tell, of course, we have our pliers here. Since this doesn't have a bail handle, a pair of pliers would be very important. And you can see our beans are nicely rehydrated. All right, very good. Now we're going to set it down and put the pliers away. And then using a rag so we don't burn ourselves, take the lid and you want to pour the excess water off. All right, there we go. Got some beans rehydrated, digging in the bindle. Hobo would find his secret weapon, nicely tied up with string. Keep it from opening on accident. And in a small old anti-phlogiston tin, he would have some bacon grease, probably also procured from the same lady that gave him the dried beans. Now to retrieve the skillet. Every hobo pretty much carried a skillet if they could, depending on their station in life. Of course, they used a lot of tin cans too. Let's put some lard in here, or some bacon grease. All right, this is looking pretty good. And you want to be generous with this, but again, you want to save some for a little bit later. Bacon grease has a lot of good nutrients in it, and we don't want to burn anything to the pan. Also remember that bacon grease is already salty, so you want to be careful not to over salt this when you're cooking it. All right, we're going to put the skillet here over top the coals. Kind of brace the handle up like that. That way it doesn't get too hot. Even though these are cool handle skillets, it's a good idea not to let them get over top of the fire, because they will heat up. And we want to just melt all that wonderful bacon grease. All right, as you can see, the bacon grease is now thoroughly liquid. Now we're just going to take our beans and we're going to pour them right in, just like this. All right, there you see we've got a nice bit of beans here, and we're just going to stir them around a little bit, and then put them back over the fire, let it do its thing. All right, didn't take very long, and it is frying. Oh, that sounds delicious. If anything can sound delicious, that sure does. All right, so while we're waiting for our beans to fry up in our bacon grease, maybe you're wondering why this is called, Hobo's leather pants or leather breeches. It's because of, after the way that they're dried and then fried up in either lard or bacon grease, they have kind of a hard, leathery, sort of a chewy sort of substance to them. And so it was reminiscent of chewing leather, or leather breeches, as it was said back in the day. And so, again, poor man's food, something that would have been widely used and was widely used during the Depression, and something that a lot of hobos would have been very familiar with. Oh man, just listen to that sizzle. We're going to eat well tonight. All right, well, they are done. Nicely cooked up, rehydrated, ready to eat. It's time to have a bite. Sit here on our log that we had inside. We're sitting in the shelter when we built it. Ah, that looks delicious. Got to be properly thankful though. All right. That's top notch right there. Yes, it's really good, but it needs a little salt. I'll set it on the fire to keep it warm. Go over here and dig into the bindle. All right, here's our salt. All right, we got our little vial of salt right here. And don't want to put too much in here, so we're gonna do it by hand here. Sometimes if you just dump this over top, you can get a little too much. So it's a little easier to meter it out like this, since it's not actually a salt shaker or salt cellar. All right, that's probably good enough. Make sure and cap that back, the cork back where it goes. Then we'll stir it around a little bit. All right, let's see what the salt did for it here. You always have to be careful using bacon grease, because bacon's so salty, you don't want to overdo it while you're cooking it. You can always add it, but you can't take it out. Oh my. Makes all the difference in the world. Now all we got to do is put on a pot of coffee and we'll be ready for the evening. Well, folks, I hope you've enjoyed this little foray into the past as we examine real poor man's food. How hobos ate leather pants or leather breeches. A delicious food, a simple food, 3 ingredients, dried green beans, a little bit of fat of some sort, would be pork fat, lard or bacon grease, and then a little bit of salt. This is James Bender for WayPoint Survival. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also make sure and check out the links in the description box below, just under the More button. While you're down there, you'll find our link for our WayPoint Survival digital class. This is where you can sign up to train in the comfort and convenience of your own backyard, the top 20 skills that we consider to be the most important from our Phase 1 Survival and Bushcraft class. You'll also find the link where you can sign up for the WayPoint Survival and Prepping 101 newsletter. Make sure you sign up for that. Again, totally free and absolutely full of wonderful ideas to help you out. You'll also find the link for waypointsurvival.com where you can sign up to take in-person classes at our beautiful training facility here in Southern Ohio. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel. We'd really appreciate it. And when you do subscribe, make sure and press that bell button so that you can stay notified of all of our upcoming videos, and we'll talk to you next time.